Hi friends, I'm Mike Malcolm, and this is Tri-Spired Tuesday, the video series that helps us evangelize Tulsa and the whole world using the beautiful art and architecture of Holy Family Cathedral. Today we're up here in the beautifully newly renovated choir loft, and we're going to talk about some of the personalities that made beautiful music for Holy Family over the decades. Let's start at the very beginning with our very first church, our first pastor, Father Charles Van Hulse. He was dialoguing through a series of letters with the Sisters of Mount Carmel. They agreed to staff the school, to live on site, to teach all the kids, and also to direct a choir. Now, the sisters agreed to that, but they had one provision. They said the choir must be made up of students, and I quote, not the ladies and gentlemen of the parish. So they did. They trained a group of children to be able to sing all the Mass parts. Their big debut performance was Midnight Mass 1899. Now, as a culture, people just didn't stay up that late, as a matter of course. And those poor kids were falling asleep during Mass, so the sisters would walk around and gently shake the kids to wake them up before the next piece that they had to perform. So kind of a funny story from our early days. Later on, this big church was built. The school was built next door to this new church, and the school hired a man named F.A. Boyer. He continued the work of the sisters leading a school choir, and he also formed the very first parish adult choir. A huge milestone came in 1928 when the parish hired Professor Harry Evans. Harry Evans was perhaps the highest profile choir director in our history. He made his debut on the world stage at the tender age of 8 in Southwark Cathedral in his native England. He was hailed as a child prodigy, singing these boy soprano parts absolutely beautifully. He got a lot of attention and was part of a choir that sang at the coronation of King George V in 1911. Eventually, as he grew up, he moved to the United States, toured around the United States, giving various concerts in different entourages, different ensembles, and he eventually found his way to Tulsa. In 1928, Holy Family hired him as part of the school faculty, but he also continued the work that Mr. Boyer had done earlier in keeping the adult choir going. For the kids, he assembled a huge choir, a 60-voice male choir that traveled all around the state and won several state music competitions. Every Good Friday, he would fill the cathedral with people from Tulsa who would come in to hear the choir's performance of Dubois' famous The Seven Last Words of Jesus. Professor Harry Evans' impact on Holy Family's music program was unparalleled. In fact, during his tenure, Midnight Mass from this cathedral was broadcast nationwide for years and years and years. Our choir was that good, and they still are. While rehearsing for the 1946 Christmas Masses, Professor Evans had a heart attack. He went to the hospital, and there was some terminal damage to his heart that took place. He insisted on being carried up to this choir loft to direct the choir at the Christmas Masses that year in 1946. He died a couple of weeks later in January of 1947. The 1960s and 1970s were an interesting time for music here. We found ourselves without a high school, and as Tulsa continued to grow and grow and grow, most Catholics were going to church out in the suburbs. And so few people were coming downtown to Mass, even in this beautiful cathedral. And there were a number of volunteer choirs that existed through the 60s and 70s. But it was really in the early 1970s that Father Jim White, the famous historian of Eastern Oklahoma, he was the associate pastor at the cathedral, and he revitalized the adult choir in the 1970s. The parish hired the great organist Farrell Dixon in 1984. He joined the choir director John Sessing, and they produced excellent music for the cathedral through the 80s and 90s. It was during the 90s that a choir member and a chant devotee, Mark Nelson, formed a motet choir, which is a smaller choir of a few select voices that do complex polyrhythmic and very interesting, like Palestrina type compositions for the parish. It was wonderful. And then eventually the parish hired Mr. Ernest Neal, who is the current choir director and the current organist for the cathedral. And we'll have him appear in a few future episodes of Tri-Spired Tuesday, demonstrating the pipe organ and showing us the changes that are going on during the choir loft renovation. Thank you for watching Tri-Spired Tuesday. I will see you next week.